Catus, Maximus here, this time with a public service announcement about how this Olympia Tools retractable turbo knife, retractable utility knife, sucks. It's the easiest way to put it. The one thing I'll give it credit for, pretty easy to move back and forth. It does have two positions. We have an extended position. That allows you to get flatter against the surface and have just a bit of a steeper angle, but it also kind of promotes you to want to use your finger right here. And then if you get into that habit, you'll end up needing it, forgetting about that, going up to the first position, putting your finger right here and cutting yourself. So kind of a bad idea. Second thing, having a utility knife that actually slides in between the slot, even though they gave it plenty of space. Utility knives are used in lots of gritty, dirty environments. Lots of stuff will build in there, and eventually this will be very difficult to actually slide back and forth. That's just the nature of it. That's why so many are folding. I'll also be comparing to just a regular old retractable utility knife. Another thing I will give them credit for is blade changes are really easy. They're not integrated in the knife like a master mechanic, but you just press a button, you can pull the blade out, and you don't actually have to repress the button. You can just push the blade back in and it snaps right into place, and that push button only activates in this middle position. It doesn't activate in this most outward position. It is pretty easy to retract. Instead of pressing down, it's a press over, but that also creates an Achilles heel because you'll be using it in some kind of tough situation, forgetting what you're doing, holding onto it with your thumb, accidentally bump it and maybe push it in. So that also frustrates me. It really is not that great. There are hundreds of reviews of these on Amazon. I just can't understand why. There is no middle position, just to have the blade poking out for opening packages, such as a regular old utility knife has, where you can just bump it out just for, once I said, a package opening, or of course have it all the way out. Another thing, if we do compare to both of these, is the profile. I mean, this has a profile. There's a reason the utility knives like this are the standards, because you have a tight edge, so you can get into tight corners and really be able to get right in there and make the cuts that you need. Second reason is how close the blade is to the bottom of the knife versus something like this. So we can see on something like this, I can get a very shallow angle. So if you're cutting linoleum, flooring, all sorts of stuff, this will make it a lot easier having a very shallow angle versus the angle that you can achieve on this. And in the lower position, it's absolutely terrible. Or even this in the middle position, you can still get a pretty steep angle. So still would have to recommend a regular utility knife. Another sad part, no extra blade storage. It does have a blade clip. I mean, people like it because it's retractable, but once again, no blade storage. Pretty easy for this to accidentally get pushed forward. Not the greatest ergonomics. And to tell you the truth, Irwin makes some terrible products these days, but their folding pocket utility knife versus a turbo knife is much better. Oh, and one thing I should mention is this is really hardly any shorter than a regular utility knife, and the inside of this thing can hold like 5 or 10 blades. But I'm going to still tell people, go with the Irwin. It has a really good belt clip, and even versus the 3 screws that Olympia uses, their belt clip's right on the main pin. It's not going to come loose. It has a little line cutter right there. It has this weird 45-degree position for, it's like a lockout for changing the blades, which is kind of odd. But instead, or I shouldn't say instead, it still has pretty easy to change blades. It's push button once you're in that position. And we can see that because the bottom of the knife here doesn't have this big bulge on it, that this thing can also get some pretty steep angles. Really much more usable in many situations. The other thing is that you have much greater grip. They have a much wider surface. This is jimping, this texturing, or this is, crossbars, but this little grip area is known as jimping. And then it's just more natural. You can hold it. You have jimping down there. So you actually have a nice grip. I'll have to admit, this does have decent ergonomics, specifically because they have just a bit of a sharper notch there versus just a light hump. So when you're doing activities where you're really pulling, your finger really grabs in there. And then in addition to all that, they even found a way to make space to have at least a couple extra blades inside the knife. And so that's kind of the deal. Is they want like 12 bucks for one of these on Amazon, and that's like right about the same price as this Irwin. And the Irwin's actually a lot better for actually using for day-to-day purposes. And we can see the profile of the Irwin. It's a little bit thicker, I guess, on average, but it's actually thinner this way. And the boot, this is all cast zinc or cast, it's all a metal housing on this Irwin, where this is just some aluminum plates and then a big plastic insert, so it's actually made better. And under certain situations, such as this knife, when you're really trying to puncture or put a lot of down pressure, all the stress is just kind of going up right against here. There's actually this weird slot, and I think that's just the stop. I don't know what that's about. But all the pressure is just sitting up right on this piece of metal, and I could easily see over not much time, if you're somebody who has to do a lot of pressing down hard, that this is really going to start getting loose. Where a design like this is much more sturdy in situations where you really have to use a lot more force. And that's if you're into, you know, the folding or pocket utility knives. Otherwise, you really can't beat a regular old utility knife just because they're regular old for a reason. They work, and they're actually pretty compact. Surprisingly enough, a regular utility knife is far lighter than any of these folding designs because they have to have all this extra material. This Irwin probably weighs twice as much as the Klein. And so that's really the deal. Decide if you really need a utility knife that's a pocket that you need a clip on. Otherwise, I'd go with a regular one. In either case, at least go for an Irwin. But the TurboKnife suck. I don't know. I talk so long about it. I just hate finding products like this. I think they suck. Go online, and everybody thinks they're the best thing since sliced bread. And I just am like, wow, somebody used a hatchet to slice up that bread. You've never actually had like evenly hand sliced or machine sliced bread before. So that's the only way to really explain all the great reviews of this knife, because it isn't a great knife and it doesn't deserve positive reviews. Anyway, sorry for rambling on about this. Just I would avoid the Olympia TurboKnife. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.